Medicine residency at the University of Wisconsin in 1984. He looks much younger. He has followed a plant-based lifestyle himself since 1977 and has practiced lifestyle family medicine in Ann Arbor for 34 years. He has special interests in health promotion, positive wellness, and supporting the natural healing process that we all have within us. He is chairman of the board and head of the Family Medicine Division for his medical group, IHA. He is also on the board of directors at St. Joseph Mercy Hospital in Ann Arbor. Help me welcome Dr. Robert Breakey.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you. All right, I want to thank you all for coming out on, especially on a beautiful fall day where University of Michigan is playing. I mean, to be competing with them, right? Of course, they are ahead 28-0, so I think we got this one. Oh, spoiler, I'm sorry. Some of you were waiting to play it later. So sorry. No, thank you for having me today. Before we start, I want to take you back to April 30th of 1981. It was my last day of medical school. And our professor gets up in front of us and he says, "Congratulations, tomorrow you all will graduate from one of the finest medical schools in the world, University of Michigan." And he said, "Unfortunately, half of what we taught you is wrong." And we all looked at each other like, is he joking or something? He said, "Further unfortunately, we don't know which half." Now, it turned out he was right. Now, of course, they didn't teach us anything wrong on purpose. They thought it was all correct. But remember when they said, don't let your baby sleep on his back? It turns out that increases the risk of SIDS if you put them on the belly. They taught us not to use certain medications called beta blockers after a heart attack because they would slow the heart. It turns out those are life-saving. Now, again, they didn't mean to, but nowhere did they teach us more wrong information than in the paltry amount of nutrition information they taught us. They said that, for example, animal protein is superior because it better matches the kind of amino acid balance we need. They taught us that heme iron, which is present in animal foods, is better absorbed and therefore a better way to get your iron. They taught us that diabetes and coronary artery disease were chronic, irreversible diseases that, sorry, once you had them, the best we can do is manage them with medications. They're not reversible. Well, we now know better. And we're going to talk today about a lot of the updates of nutrition that unfortunately still many aren't being taught, but I have a passion for teaching. First disclosure, I have nothing to sell, no special anything, just love spreading health. Suppose you owned a racehorse, and this is Secretariat, one of the greatest of all time, and your goal is to win the Kentucky Derby. Of course, you're going to get a good trainer and workouts, a great jockey, you're going to get good breeding and safety, but without the right food for your horse, none of the rest is going to matter, right? You say, I'm going to get the finest oats and hay for my horse, and your trainer says, no, this horse is an athlete. He needs protein. He needs fish and seafood and chicken and eggs and meat and dairy products. And pretty soon, of course, your horse is not only not running fast, he looks like this. That's not horse food, right? We kind of accept that each animal does best on a certain kind of food, but when it comes to humans, suppose instead you're issued a human being, and congratulations, all of you were, and your goal is to grow this human into a young, thriving, healthy adult with great resources and connectiveness, satisfying career. And of course, you're going to want to get good safety and find a good physician, get good sleep, do your workouts. But once again, without the right food, your human being is not going to thrive very well. I like this from the book You Staying Young. You can see here on the y-axis quality of life. We all start out pretty good quality, go through childhood, maybe an acute illness here, back up again, bounce up. But then about middle life, people start getting a little overweight, maybe add some hypertension, diabetes, a handful of pills, and bam, dead of a stroke at the ripe old age of only 74. You know, what's wrong with this picture? What instead if you could follow this trajectory and keep healthy and active all the way to 103, you get struck by lightning on the golf course. You're still dead. I mean, newsflash, nothing's going to save you forever. But what about the area under this curve of quality times longevity? How do we get to that point where we can follow that health curve and have healthgevity in addition to longevity? Well, let's see if we can get this video to play to help to dramatize this for you a little bit. It's only a 1-minute YouTube video, and our AV guys are getting it right there. It's coming up on my little screen here, but not on the main screen. Okay, here we go.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
Even though we're 10 years of sickness, and that's increasing, by the way, our healthgevity is shortening as people get sick and earlier, there's hope for this message. Everybody, when I show this to my patients in the office, say, I want to be the guy on the left. You say, good news, it's largely a choice. You know, about 10 or 15% maybe your genetics that you can't do anything about. Of course, we all age, you can't do anything about that. But the rest is largely under your control with adequate sleep, managing stress, getting some exercise, and eating healthy food. And today, any of those could be a whole talk in and of itself, but my main focus today is the food part. Not that it's that much more important than the others, but again, it's a critical component of looking to improve your health. So I like to divide what people call foods into 4 categories. You've got your animal foods on the left, plant on the right, and unprocessed on the top, and processed foods on the bottom. So you get the idea. Down here is processed animal foods like cheese and hot dogs, chicken McNuggets. Up here, at least, it looks like a steak, an egg, or a glass of milk. Down here is Captain Crunch potato chips, olive oil, French fries, bunch of other junk food. And up here is vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans, with some nuts and seeds sprinkled in. So if we think about these as categories of what makes a food health supporting to help us support us in longevity, on that bottom part, the processed foods, it turns out the food industries have hijacked our natural taste for the sweetness in fruits like strawberries, and they have created fat, salt, and sugar-laden pseudo-foods that are just designed to addict us. Let me give you an example. You've all been here, or if you've been to San Francisco, you've been here, and the waitress brings you this. Already you're salivating, and you look across at the guy next to you and say, oh, I ordered the wrong thing. But the point is, these foods that are just, again, full of fat, salt, and sugar that stimulate reward centers in our brain to keep us coming back are not really food at all. They're not health supporting. And again, with this audience, I don't need to spend a lot of time on this part. Let's go ahead and cross off this lower section of the processed foods and focus on this top part to say, are we meant to be natural omnivores, that is, eating a variety of natural, whole, plant and animal foods, or should we be more towards the plant food side? To help answer that, let's back up a step and say, what is food? And in its broadest sense, anything organic is food. This rotting tree stump is food for these maggots and carpenter ants. This grass is food for this horse. This chicken is food for this fox, right? And this milk is food for this baby cow, right? But none of these are really human food if you define food as that which is health supporting. It's not just keeps us alive, but makes us vibrant and healthy. People think that just because it's sold in a Kroger store, that it's food, that it's meant for us. And yet tens of thousands of studies document that optimizing your food choice can improve performance, help us to heal injury faster, improve our health, vitality, well-being, and even longevity. Let's answer that question next then. What makes a food health supporting? What helps us to put it in that category of this which will help us to reach our optimal health goals? To do this, I've got this chart, which, can we turn down the lights in the front part here at all, maybe? You could probably still see it well enough. But the desirable characteristics of a health-supporting food is that it's rich in antioxidants, high in fiber, alkalinizing, free of cholesterol, anti-inflammatory, rich in phytonutrients, and it has a balanced, healthy set of macronutrients, that is fats, carbs, and proteins. And we're going to go through each of these. I'll explain a little more about why each of these are important for health support and how we can compare plant versus animal foods in each component. So let's start with antioxidants. They did the study on over 3,100 different foods. That is everything from broccoli and lentils to Captain Crunch to Santa Claus beer. And they categorize the amount of antioxidants in these foods. And you don't have to memorize the whole chart, but because the summary says that the plant-type foods had an average of 1,157 units of antioxidants versus 18 for the animal. If you're a horse, you eat that grass rich in antioxidants and you use it for your purposes, and not much is left in the meat of the animal. The maximum 289,000 in plant foods versus 100 for animal shows that the antioxidants are not only predominantly, but way shifted towards. Well, and here it is, it says those with low antioxidant contents in the animal foods and plant-based foods are rich in antioxidants. Well, why is this important? Because oxygen is a two-edged sword. We can use it to extract energy from food by taking carbon, oxygen, hydrogen in fats, proteins, and carbs, and producing water, CO2, and energy. Or it can cause slow oxidation in the form of rust or even fire. Out of control, or even when in control, a certain number of what are called free radicals are formed in the process of extracting energy from food. These are nasty little molecules that go around like a bull in a china shop and with their unpaired electron upset the balance throughout the body. They're highly reactive, causing DNA damage that can lead to mutations and set one up for cancer. Proteins throughout the body get denatured, that is folded and twisted the wrong way, creating an immune response and chronic inflammation. They can cause endothelial damage. That's the lining of all the arteries and veins, setting one up for atherosclerosis and heart attacks or strokes. And finally, cellular damage causing premature aging and organ dysfunction throughout the body. So what's the answer to this? Antioxidants to the rescue. Along, nature provides in foods the antioxidants to help put out this firestorm of free radicals in the form of a whole lot of antioxidants, and you know many of them, vitamin C and E, beta-carotene, vitamin A, really thousands of others that come naturally in whole plant foods that help us to counter the effects of the damage of free radicals. Question, can I just get my antioxidants from supplements? Anybody have an idea? No, it doesn't work that way. In fact, in one study they did, giving beta-carotene to smokers in an attempt to try to prevent lung cancer caused more cancer in those smokers by extracting it out and not supplying it along with the fiber and thousands of other components that work synergistically when it comes in an apple, an orange, or a lentil. You have done a misservice. So don't think you can just get it from supplements. So we'll put a big 5-star on rich in antioxidants for the plant foods and an X over by the animal. What about fiber? We say when a woman is pregnant, she's eating for 2, right? Well, in reality, we all the time are eating for 30 trillion and 1. And we're the 1. And the 30 trillion are trillions of little microorganisms, mostly in our colon, but throughout our body. See, you're not just you're a community. And this community works together to promote health for the whole. Those bacteria have an interest in you being healthy too, because you're their house, you're their vehicle. So if you feed them right, they'll support your immune function, balance hormones, manage toxins, actually nourish the colons, or what are called short-chain fatty acids, lower inflammation. They produce several nutrients. They signal satiety by telling your brain that, hey, we ate too, thank you very much. Butyric acid goes up and the brain says, good. If they're not fed right, that doesn't close the loop and says, still hungry, keep eating. They aid in nutrient absorption. In contrast, if you don't feed them well, they inflame the colon. They actually produce toxins. And these are different bacteria because different ones thrive if you eat chicken and cheese and eggs and fiber-devoid foods versus those for vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and fiber. They increase serum cholesterol by reabsorbing cholesterol as a result of the slow transit time. They create inflammation, and that can cause leaky gut syndrome, where the cells in the colon start to separate, and components get through into the bloodstream, setting up inflammation and setting people up for autoimmune disease. Sorry, getting a little technical here, but the bottom line is you want to feed your microbiome well, and what do they eat? Fiber. How much fiber do we need? Well, the average American gets about 15 grams a day. And the dietary guidelines, which again are pretty faulty, suggest we should be getting at least twice that. The minimum goal, if you look at the healthiest populations in the world in the blue zones, should be more like 60 to 100 grams a day. This is what best supports, we lost mine, oh, there it is, best supports our microbiome, and they in turn then support us. So where does this occur? Well, the best are vegetables and beans if you look per 2,000 calories. So if you ate only this food, here's how much fiber you'd get from pinto beans, over 140 grams. Remember, our minimum goal should be in this 40 range, really more like 60 to 100. Blueberries, avocados, whole grain breads, and barley. When you start getting processed foods like white bread, there's a little, but not much. And of course, all animal foods, along with olive oil, have none. Fiber comes from cell walls, which is in plants. Animal foods have no fiber. So eating these foods, eggs, cheese, olive oil, chicken, white bread, leads to starvation for your microbiome and the consequences thereof. Eating these high fiber, rich foods leads to nourishment. And you can see this in population studies. This is the relative risk of these three diseases: heart disease, breast cancer, and diabetes. As the amount of fiber in the diet goes up from 15 to 60 grams, and it probably would continue benefit even further beyond that, down goes the incidence of each of these diseases in a significant manner. Now, it's not just that the fiber is helping for this, it's a marker for good foods. Only whole plant foods have fiber, and along with that come the phytonutrients, the antioxidants, other things. But the point is, the more fiber, the more whole plant foods, the lower your risk for these chronic disease. Quiz time again. Can't I just get it from supplements? No. In fact, in many ways, this will help with constipation, which is a symptom of low fiber diet, right? Epidemic in our society. But the good bacteria don't just eat psyllium husks. In fact, they don't eat psyllium husks at all. You're not feeding them right, and you're not getting the benefit of that fiber. So in many ways, taking Metamucil and Benefiber gets rid of that pesky constipation symptom, but not the underlying cause for it. And you've just done a disservice by making yourself think, oh, I'm fine now, I'm regular, but you're not getting the benefit of fiber. So let's put a big 5-star on high fiber for plant foods, whole, natural, unrefined plant foods, and a big X under animal. What about alkaline? It turns out that the amino acid content of foods, because of the proteins they contain, metabolize to sulfuric acid for certain of the 2 amino acids, and these are especially high in fish, pork, and poultry. So the acid that comes from that has to be buffered, and the kidneys in particular are susceptible to this. They produce ammonia to try to protect themselves in the short run from this high acid environment, this metabolic acidosis that's induced by the animal foods. And in the short run, that helps them, but in the long run can lead to chronic kidney disease, calcium wasting, osteoporosis. So in contrast, the fruits and vegetables are alkaline in their balance. Beans are alkaline, the grains are about neutral. But we can, again, put a big 5-star here for alkaline, especially for fruits and veggies, and a big X because the animal foods tend to be acid, especially fish. What about cholesterol? Well, cholesterol only occurs in animal foods. I should put eggs on here too as one of the highest sources of cholesterol, and dairy. 0 in any plant foods. And in case you read this fine medical journal that said, oh, by the way, cholesterol doesn't matter anymore. This kind of drives me crazy because industry designed a study here where you take people on a high cholesterol diet and you give them even more cholesterol, and guess what? There's no difference in the outcomes there, so cholesterol doesn't matter. Literally, that's what they did. Now, of course, this sold a lot of Time magazines and medical journals, got people's attention, and people love to read that what they love to eat is good for them. So good, bacon and eggs are back again, good. It was a very poorly designed study. The analogy you could use here is if you took crash cars and you said, boy, crashing people into a brick wall at 90, 100, or 110 miles per hour, they all die. No, speed doesn't matter, right? So if you go down to very low levels of cholesterol, then it definitely matters. High cholesterol in the bloodstream is a linear relationship with heart disease, strokes, atherosclerosis, and you can affect that by lowering both your dietary cholesterol and saturated fats. In fact, the average American's serum cholesterol is about 210. If you look at the areas of the world where people don't have heart disease, their cholesterols are less than 150. Rural Africa, China, many hunter-gatherer societies. And so this is what we call less than 200 kind of normal here. It's not really normal. Over 500,000 deaths per year from heart attacks. And this is a big part of it. So again, let's put a big cholesterol free on plant foods because they have 0 and a big X on the animal foods. What about inflammation? Well, plant foods we already talked about are anti-inflammatory because the rich amount of antioxidants. They support your healthy microbiome, which creates an anti-inflammatory environment, and they're rich in phytonutrients. We're going to come back to that. In contrast, animal foods have several concerns that are actually pro-inflammatory. The first is bacterial endotoxins. The average quarter pounder has 100 million bacteria on it. Now, most of these die in cooking, but not before they form substances called endotoxins, which are then absorbed into the bloodstream. They survive stomach acid, cooking, and digestive enzymes. And they go around the body creating inflammation, especially on blood vessels, stiffening blood vessels, setting them up for atherosclerosis. So these, and the saturated fat that comes in the package with these animal foods aids the absorption across the intestine. The second is arachidonic acid. This is the substance our own bodies use to instigate the inflammatory cascade when it's needed. So you step on a splinter or get a cut or a scrape, you bring arachidonic acid to help bring white blood cells and inflammatory components to help that healing process and prevent infection and invasion. Well, plants don't have arachidonic acid, but other animals do, especially if you're a chicken cooped up with 5 in a cage, 18 by 18 on today's modern factory farms. And this arachidonic acid goes into their muscle and their eggs. And when you eat chicken or eggs, you are eating inflammation. You are eating arachidonic acid, which is your body's message to create inflammation, to set you into that cascade. So not good. The next I mentioned at the beginning is heme iron. It turns out that heme iron is the form of iron that occurs in blood. So when you eat animal muscle in the form of meat, you're getting heme iron. This is it's not only lack of antioxidants, this is a pro-oxidant. Heme iron goes around creating free radicals wherever it goes, and your body has to try to extinguish that. So pro-inflammatory, and in fact, it's linked with an increased risk of diabetes. Per 1 milligram of heme iron in the diet, 16% increase in diabetes, 27% risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, especially colon, breast, and lung. And by the way, it's not hard to get a milligram of heme iron. 1 3-ounce portion of clams gives you 23 milligrams of heme iron. Red meat, ground beef, venison, people think, oh, I'm just eating wild-caught game. It still contains iron and carnitine, arachidonic acid. So this is there. The next is carnitine that occurs in meat and choline in eggs, which metabolize by the bacteria in people who eat meat to a substance called trimethylamine. This won't be on the test, don't worry about the details. The bottom line, though, is that liver oxidizes this to trimethylamine oxide. Once again, bad actor. In the test meal, they gave people an Egg McMuffin meal, and within hours, the arteries in their bodies stiffened by 50%, largely as a result of this trimethylamine oxide going around causing inflammation in their blood vessels. Here it is graphically from an article in the New England Journal of Medicine. Meat, dairy, and eggs in the front door, gut bacteria, trimethylamine, atherosclerosis, stroke, heart attack, death. I know, not a good outcome, so if you don't want it, don't put that in the front door. We're starting to see that this inflammation from arachidonic acid, heme iron, lack of fiber, and a host of other things is the root cause then for many of our common chronic diseases. Whether it's diabetes, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, have a common root in inflammation that results largely from our poor diets, lack of exercise, sleep, and other. Time magazine, again, calling inflammation the secret killer. Not so much a secret anymore as people are recognizing this. And let's put a big 5-star here in plant foods that are anti-inflammatory and animal foods actually pro-inflammatory. What about phytonutrients? We think we got it all figured out with the 3 macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fat, and about 15 vitamins and minerals each. But no, there are over 30,000 additional nutrients in our plant foods, like the bioflavonoids in citrus, the lycopene in tomatoes, the phytates in beans, isoflavones in soy, carotenoids in carrots and sweet potatoes, that support immune function, that help to balance, that do repair work. These are not really optional. So in a sense, they should be vitamins, but they come in plant foods. Phyto means plant. So there's 0 in animal foods, and these thousands of additional nutrients that come with whole plant foods are not present in animal foods. So we'll put a big 5-star here and an X here. And finally, macronutrients. And I have to caveat by this. So everybody thinks of, well, I'm on a high carb, low protein, high fat. I need my protein. I don't want too much fat. What we talk about these as if they're foods, and they're really just components of food. So as I go through this section, remember, we don't eat protein. When they say, do you want a protein on your salad? We're going to come to that. It's really, we think about it in foods. But everybody talks about, wonders about, thinks about, and there is a better balance and a better component of macronutrients. So that's why I'm delving into it a little bit here. And it turns out in the areas where people live longest in the blue zones, their diets are about 80% carbs, unrefined carbs, not sugar and white bread, and 10% fat, 10% protein on average. Animal foods, in contrast, are all fat and protein without that vital component of the carbs in there. So let's look again, comparing each, though, not only in amounts, but in quality. So if you look at protein from animal foods, we've been kind of conditioned, the media continues to kind of think of animal foods as synonymous with protein, right? When they say, do you want a protein on your salad? Like, oh, you want chicken or fish or meat on your salad. And you don't have to be plant-based for very long. In fact, within a day, several people will ask you, but where do you get your protein? No? Okay, so quiz time. Which of these have protein? Oh, you guys are... That's right, exactly. All of these have plenty of protein, and fruits between 5 and 10%, veggies between 10 and 40%. These are averages, but all these have good quality protein. And it turns out all you really need to meet your protein needs is between 5 and 10% of your calories from protein. In fact, human breast milk, which we all thrive on in our first year of life, is only 6% protein. And we triple our birth weight during that time. So during maintenance phase now, you don't really need much more than that. It's about that. So all these get plenty of quality of the quantity of protein. And furthermore, it's a common myth that, well, it's hard to get the essential amino acids from plants. No, it's not. All plants are complete with all 8 of the essential amino acids. So the quantity and the quality are excellent in there. In fact, it's even worse than that, though, because we already talked about how these animal proteins are acidic because the high level of sulfur-containing amino acids, especially in the fish, pork, and poultry. They're more allergenic, especially in dairy and eggs, because they're more like us. When they cross over, they set up an immune response, creating allergies, asthma, inflammation, autoimmune disease. They're pro-inflammatory from the components we talked about, and they stimulate a hormone called IGF-1. In a sense, when your body sees additional animal protein, which it recycles a lot of what you have, by the way, which is animal protein recycled. And when it sees additional beyond that, it stimulates a growth hormone called IGF-1. Now, why is this important? Because you're not needing to grow any taller here. When you're a kid, you need IGF-1. You're either going to grow wider or you're going to add kerosene to your cancer cells. They thrive on IGF-1. If you take cancer cells on a petri dish and give them IGF-1, deprive them of it, and they have a hard time growing. So animal proteins stimulate cancer. We're going to come back to that one. So we used to think back in medical school that it was all about the animal fat, right? High blood pressure, obesity, stroke. So industry to the rescue. We have low-fat cottage cheese and skim milk, and I don't know how you make fat-free ballpark franks. So it's 95% fat. And egg beaters, right? All these were industry's answer to the animal fat's not good for us craze. Well, it turns out that animal protein is also a concern. It independently raises serum cholesterol, so it contributes to all these and contributes to cancer, especially breast, colon, prostate, osteoporosis, and chronic kidney disease. So in this study, studying folks in middle age from 50 to 65, those with the highest protein intake had a 75% increased risk in all-cause mortality, that's called dying, and a 4-fold increase in cancer death over the 400% increase in cancer death over the following 18 years. So it works in theory and in practice, that animal protein. So key take-home point, and again, this may come as a surprise compared to the traditional wisdom, animal protein is toxic to humans. We are not meant to be eating animal protein in our diet if we want longevity, health, and best health. What about the fats? We already talked about how animal foods are the only source of cholesterol. There's none in plant foods. Much more saturated fat, and again, the story is similar here where industry designed some studies we can get to in question and answer if you want to. But saturated fat really does cause trouble. These trans fats that the FDA banned now in processed foods, all that Crisco, no longer allowed in trans foods, are naturally occurring in meats. They're naturally occurring in animal foods. And then heavy metals and contaminants are much more concentrated. Remember the food chain in 4th grade, the little fish eats the medium fish, the big fish. As you go up the food chain, you're concentrating environmental contaminants. Oh, this is the one to remind me about that. Industry back in 2015 sponsored the study. We can go into if you want about how saturated fat's actually okay. Eat butter again. It is poor science. Sold a lot of Time magazines, made a lot of people feel good about eating their favorite foods, but it's not true. In fact, saturated fats are also implicated not only in heart disease now, but strokes, high blood pressure, diabetes, breast and prostate cancer, enhancing that trimethylamine absorption, and Alzheimer's disease. So I want to focus for a second, too, on this heavy metal and contaminants, because it turns out if you take people and feed them tuna, here's a study, the biological half-life of mercury by feeding people fish. You can take and watch their levels of mercury in their bloodstream rise day after day after day as you continue to feed them tuna fish. As you stop the fish, back down it goes. I'm like, wait a minute. What's wrong with this picture? Where's the institutional review board here as we watch as people's mercury levels go up from 6 to over 25 by feeding them mercury-laden fish? I mean, that's like going to Flint and saying, oh, we found lead in the water. Let's feed it to some kids and see what happens to their lead levels. I'm sorry. This is what happens, though. You'll get mercury when you eat fish, especially the big game fish. We used to have these mercury sphygmomanometers in our offices, and they made us take them out because the mercury is so toxic that if one of those fell off the wall or broke, the guy in hazmat suits would have to come in. They'd have to strip out all the carpet. They'd have to redo the exam room. So we changed them over to these analog. So key take-home point, eating fish is toxic because of the environmental contaminants. Not just what naturally occurs there, the protein and other, lack of fiber, but because the way we've so thoroughly polluted our environment now, sadly so. We probably heard of the Zantac recall because they had trace amounts of a potential carcinogen in there. but it's okay to sell meat that has known carcinogens in there. What about the World Health Organization verifying that processed meats, especially hot dog, hams, lunch meats, are a type 1 carcinogen, right up there with cigarette smoke, plutonium, and asbestos. They reviewed over 800 studies. Once again, industry kind of fought back with rogue science to try to disprove that, but it's pretty clear that these heterocyclic amines and cancer-promoting components in foods, especially animal foods that are cooked at high temperatures over 212 degrees, so baking, frying, grilling, creates these heterocyclic amines which accelerate all 3 stages of cancer: the inciting stage, the spread stage, and the inciting, the growth, and the spread stage. So not good in that regard. And then let's look at carbs. Animal foods generally have none. Meat and eggs have no carbs. Milk does have sugar. A lot of people don't know that skim milk is 70% sugar. Instead, the plant foods are rich in complex carbohydrates. No fiber over here, high in fiber. And the milk, the sugar that it does have is called lactose, which of course is a majority of the world's population can't even digest after infancy. And why should we? All mammals lose their ability to digest lactose after infancy, because why would you need to continue to take milk? It's not a food for later childhood or adults. And those of us that are able to digest lactose, it does break down to galactose, which is not a good sugar. They use this to induce premature aging in laboratory rats. It's not a healthy sugar. So lactose breaks down, if you can break it down, into galactose, or if you get lactate milk. Right, the dairy industry's solution to lactose intolerance, which is really normal human. Then it breaks down and you get that galactose kind of directly absorbed into the bloodstream. So we see a pattern here too. Protein is not only good quantity, but much better quality as far as health supporting in plants. Fats are much better quantity and quality in plants. And the carbs too, virtually non-existent in animal except for the lactose, and much better there. So we can go back to our main table now and complete it with a 5-star here and an X over here. Are we starting to notice a pattern here? Is this just a coincidence that these plant foods seem to be supporting of health and the animal foods in contrast degrade health? No, this is not a coincidence. We just go back to the very beginning and where God said, "Behold, I've given you every herb bearing seed that's on the face of the earth and every tree in which the fruits of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." This is your food. This is what we were naturally meant to eat. And therefore, that's why it's healthy. God wants us to be healthy and provides us with the information and the knowledge to do so. Unfortunately, we have a system that would have you like otherwise in order that they perpetuate their sales of foods, information, pharmaceuticals, whatever, to their gain. So we can come down to the bottom line: plant foods, health supporting, animal foods not. We're done. No, not quite. Let's keep going. I want to emphasize one more component here, which it doesn't fit exactly into here. It turns out that in the National Retail Meat Survey of 2011, I don't know if you can see what's coming out right here, but it ends up here. And you go, ugh, I got to clean this off, right? Unfortunately, in 2011 CDC report showed that chicken, 90% of supermarket chicken was contaminated with fecal matter, with chicken poop. Sorry to be so graphic here, but in the slaughterhouse, this hook comes and it pulls out the insides, and in the process, all of that fecal matter gets all over everything in the processed food. 91% of turkey, 88% of ground beef, 80% of pork chops, over 80% of eggs are contaminated with salmonella, and over 48 million Americans are sickened annually by this, what we call food poisoning. Over 50,000 are hospitalized, and thousands die from this national epidemic. But we kind of look the other way because, hey, we can't produce meat that's safe without high cost beyond what people would pay. So another piece that we're just realizing it's not just bacteria, it's also viruses. We've known for a long time that certain viruses can cause cancer. Probably the best known is cervical cancer from the HPV virus. We now test for that, and we only have to do pap smears every 5 years, right? Women, good news, remember back every year? Because if you don't have the HPV virus, you don't get cervical cancer. We've known for a long time that cows are almost universally infected with bovine leukemia virus. This causes leukemia in cows, and they said, well, so what? Viruses don't necessarily cross species. It's probably okay for humans. By the way, here's the prevalence of bovine leukemia virus by size of the herd. So small cow herds had only 83%. By the time you got to 500 or more cows in your herd, they were 100% contaminated with bovine leukemia virus. This virus then goes into the meat and milk. And for the first time, we now have a link with BLV and breast cancer. So you can look at the breast cancer cells of women who've had a mastectomy after breast cancer and find the DNA of these bovine leukemia viruses incorporated into the DNA of that breast cancer cell. What the implication is here is that as many as 37% of breast cancers may be attributable to bovine leukemia virus exposure. Dairy and beef may be a key part of our breast cancer epidemic. There's more to it than just that. It's multifactorial, but I'm just saying, not a good idea. So I think we can come back to our main chart here and say, we really want to focus here on our plant foods. By the way, I also want to emphasize that it really is both. It's health supporting is this quadrant versus anything else. If someone says, well, I'm paleo, I only eat unprocessed foods across the top here, that doesn't tell me they're healthy. They could be eating a lot of animal foods. Or if someone says, I'm vegan, I only eat on this plant side of things, I don't have anything to do with animals, that doesn't tell me they're healthy. They could be eating French fries, Coca-Cola, and Oreos and be vegan, but that's not healthy. So start to think of it, and that's why we don't call it, healthy as vegan or as unprocessed or as paleo or as other. We call it whole food, plant-based. It's the way nature intended it, and it's plant-based in its character. There it is, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. So what does this mean for people with an interest in optimal health, right? That's why you're here on a beautiful Sunday fall afternoon to learn about health. This is my patient, Karen. She saw a talk similar to this one time. She went plant-based on her diet. She lost 34 pounds in 10 months. And importantly, her diabetes, this is her hemoglobin A1C, it's a screenshot from her chart, at 8.6 was significantly out of control. Within just months, it came down to 6.1, less than 6 is normal, and finally 5.5. Her diabetes was reversed, resolved, right? How many know somebody with diabetes? Okay. It's epidemic in our country. Half of Americans by next year are expected to have either diabetes or prediabetes. Why is this, and why do we allow this? Well, the answer I call is what I call plant-based healthcare, is addressing the root cause of chronic disease and supporting our healing from within. In fact, all of these diseases are largely related to our lifestyle, mostly diet. Arthritis, obesity, breast cancer, kidney stones, diverticulitis. In fact, they should really more likely be called, instead of diseases of affluence, because they occur in countries eating the Western diet, foodborne chronic illness. Just like salmonella is a foodborne gastrointestinal illness, these are foodborne chronic illness, which, good news, are largely preventable. Fundamental paradigm shift is essential, and I call this plant-based healthcare. It's just kind of a division of lifestyle medicine, as I mentioned at the beginning. 6 principles of plant-based healthcare include empowerment over subservience. So often we go to the healthcare system and say, hey, diagnose me and fix me. Let me know what's wrong and give me the right pill or procedure. Instead, I like to empower people and say, hey, I want you to know how you can do this. Now, the easier, the stronger the why, the easier the how, and recognize that there is really a best diet that supports us. Is step 1 there. And for me, I ask people, what does health mean to you? Because you first get to recognize the connection with health or doesn't care. To me, it's being able to do what I want to do. This is me 15 feet over the Pacific Ocean in Cabo, what's called a flyboard. You get hooked up to this jet ski and it just shoot out of your feet at I don't know how many thousands of gallons per minute. And flying up there, the guy said I did better balance than, this is when I was 60, way back when, better than most people they'd seen. I like to go skiing fast and scuba diving and wakeboarding and rollerblading. Now that's not for everybody. You know, my wife is right over there safely on the shore. But it is such that whatever you want to be able to do, you want to have a working mind and body that will take you there, that will allow you to do that. We couldn't get the video to work there, but next time you see my talk, we'll see if we can get it going there because it's pretty cool. So understand the key importance of the right food, and as I mentioned, the right food really does help to do all these things. The second principle is prevention over treatment. We all know an ounce of prevention is actually worth much more than a pound of cure. And we learned this back in the seatbelt laws. As the seatbelt laws went into place on the red line there, the fatality rate went down from auto accidents. So we're talking today about a seatbelt for your fork. We also learned this in the tobacco epidemic. Cigarette use increased and increased and increased, and with about a 30-year lag, so did lung cancer rates. And then in 1963, the Surgeon General report came out, and we went from about 43% of the adult population smoking down to now, it's in the 20% range. And again, with a lag, the incidence of lung cancer is dropping precipitously because 90% of lung cancer is caused by smoking. Now, what if we recognize that 90% of colon cancer is caused by what we eat? Shouldn't we have a similar kind of national campaign to say, wow, we shouldn't be smoking and we shouldn't be eating the things that cause the second leading death by cancer too, is colon cancer. In fact, in 1993, tobacco, because smoking rates, still was the leading cause of death and disability, and now that has been surpassed by dietary risk and the resultant obesity, diabetes, heart disease that comes from that. I mentioned colon cancer, and this is personal because this is my Uncle Don with me and my wife and his son Scott on the 4th of July, just over 3 years ago. And unfortunately, by October of that year, Uncle Don was dead. He is a retired radiologist, lived at the lake, had everything going for him, everybody's favorite uncle, but he died of preventable disease. And Dr. Thomas O'Keefe, who spoke at one of our plant-based prevention of disease conference from the University of Pittsburgh, his assessment, this was his final slide, was that by switching from a Western diet to a plant-based fiber-rich diet has the potential to reduce colon cancer incidence 20 to 40-fold. Not 20 or 40%, but down by 95 to 97% of colon cancer could be prevented by switching our diet. So prevention over treatment, and next is reversal over management. I interview the new doctors for our group, and I ask them all, don't tell them if they're coming in because I want them to get their straight answer, but I ask them, is diabetes reversible? And about half of them go, well, no, it could be managed, you know, you can optimize the medications, you can try to get them to eat better, but it's not really reversible. And about a quarter of them get it half right and say, well, I suppose if someone were really extreme in their diet or they got bariatric surgery, or maybe it could go away, but not really. And only about a quarter of them get it mostly right and say, yes, diabetes isn't really a disease, it's a condition. So you know now more than most graduating residents in primary care. Yes, diabetes is reversible. Let me give you an example. This is Antoine. He came in one day and his hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of diabetes control, it should be less than 6, was 11.7, wildly out of control. It had been this way for more than a year, and I said, Antoine, so you got to either go on a whole food plant-based diet or start insulin. He said, Doc, don't like needles? I'll do the diet. I said, good for you. He came back 4 months later, and his A1C was normal. Gone. His fasting blood sugar dropped over 180 points. His cholesterol dropped almost 100 points. His triglycerides dropped almost 600 points. Normal is 150 for that one. And his microalbumin, which is a measure of kidney injury from diabetes, normal is less than 30, went from high down to normal. Just by changing his diet, he reversed his diabetes. This is what I see. Here he is today, 4 years later. He's lost 30 pounds. He's happy. He's active. If he hadn't done this, he might be setting up now for more handfuls of medications, insulin, blindness, amputations. Sorry, I know I get excited about this, but I see people every day on this fork in the road that say, wow, I'd much rather be on this fork. So what's going on here? In diabetes type 2, the insulin, which is what helps the sugar move from the bloodstream into the cells, it is not effective. So the sugar builds up in the bloodstream, and the cells then are starving in the face of plenty. The sugar is the energy for the cells. So what's gumming up this lock, or what's preventing it from doing its job, is fat, in particular saturated fat that gets inside the muscle and liver cells called intramycelial lipid. The saturated fat then from fish, chicken, eggs, cheese, and dairy products creates that blockage. And by the way, a lot of people switch from red meat to chicken. Back when I was born, chicken was about 12, 15 pounds per person per year, and now over 50 pounds of chicken per person per year. And it's not only the amount of chicken, it's the size of the chicken. They have obesified chickens. They get them to market in half the time, and they're 4 times the size. So when you eat modern day chicken, you are eating obesity, literally. So the saturated fats here from chicken contribute to that. And next is cheese. Back when I was born, it was about 8 pounds per person per year, and now up to over 33 pounds of this, which is 70% cow fat. You know, you wouldn't just eat lard, but whether a cow puts it into its udder or its hip, it's still cow fat. And cheese is 70% cow fat, saturated fat, large amounts, salt, pro-inflammatory. So once again, the diabetes epidemic, we've all known about, over 25 million people already with diabetes, is largely caused by chicken and cheese. A lot of people think that sugar causes diabetes, right? How many heard that? Now, don't get me wrong, sugar makes it worse. And if you have diabetes, you don't want to eat, nobody should be eating pure sugar. We talked about complex versus regular carbs, but it's not the underlying cause. The underlying cause is a saturated fat gumming up the work so the insulin can't do its job, the sugar builds up, and you get in trouble. Reversing Diabetes by Dr. Barnard's a great book for anybody looking for more info or have friends or others that want it. Still, diabetes, though, is not the leading cause of death. It is dwarfed by heart disease and cancer. And this is a little bit underplayed because diabetes contributes to both of those as well. But let's look at heart disease. This plaque builds up in the arteries. And I remember thinking in medical school, well, why? What's wrong with this? Why would goo and plaque and gunk plug our arteries, particularly to our heart and brain, causing heart attacks and strokes? Well, it turns out it isn't normal. If you look at rural Africa or China, where people eat whole food, plant-based diet, heart disease is non-existent. It doesn't occur, even in older age. And it's because of the diet, the difference in diet. Dr. Esselstyn from the Cleveland Clinic says heart disease is a benign foodborne illness that need never exist or progress. And you should look up his studies. You should watch the documentary Forks Over Knives. It's on Netflix. He's featured in there, and you'll see his story and the story of dozens of patients. This in particular is a 43-year-old surgeon, and this is called an angiogram, where the outline of his coronary artery shows ragged amount here in his main artery to the front side of his heart, and 4 years later on his Esselstyn whole food plant-based diet, squeaky clean. Reversible. It's not really a disease at all, it's a condition. And if any of you know Paul Chatlin, he founded a support group called Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. He was literally on the gurney to get his bypass surgery at the Cleveland Clinic and was introduced to Dr. Esselstyn, reversed it through diet, and it's not needed to go through all that. Even multiple sclerosis, this is Colleen, works at the university, had to kind of convince her neurologist to allow her to stop her medication, and now she's got more energy than ever. 3 years later, no symptoms of MS at all. Dr. Saray Stancic was a board-certified infectious disease doc in New Jersey, woke up on call one night, couldn't feel her legs, stepped on the ground, felt like burning coals, down to the emergency room, 28 years old, severe multiple sclerosis, suffered with it for 8 years, and then read the literature. Dr. Schwenk did the studies back 50 years ago out of University of Oregon. MS is, again, depends what stage you're at and how long it's been there, but commonly reversible with good diet. Shia went on to make a movie on that, and I encourage you to go to this website, codebluedoc.com, and watch the trailer. I just saw it last week at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine meeting in Orlando. It's excellent. It's going to be coming out. The distribution, they'll know sometime in the next few weeks. But watch the trailer for now. Get yourself excited about a documentary that tells not only her story, but the science and the story of dozens of others. Even lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, and other autoimmune diseases are commonly reversible. This is Dr. Brooke Goldner from Texas, and her book, Goodbye Lupus, and her more recent book, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease. So we covered that, reversal over management. Next is root cause over treating symptoms. If you really want to get to the root of something, you got to get to the root cause. If you have this in your yawn and you don't get down here and take care of this, pretty soon you end up with this, right? So you're not getting to the root cause. So if a patient comes in with a blistery, painful, infected rash, and you're taking the history and you discover that they're using Brillo on their face, you go, what? You're making it worse. What are you doing? And they say, oh, no, I read on the internet that Brillo makes it better. That keeps it clean. Of course, until they throw the Brillo, they're not going to get better. I can give them all the painkillers and antibiotics and salves and creams, but that Brillo. Now you say, of course, nobody would ever do this, and of course they wouldn't on purpose, and not with Brillo, but what about with other things? When I was a kid, I had this problem called dyshydrotic eczema. These painful little blisters on the side of my fingers. My hands would dry and scale all winter long. And the worst part was these little cracks at the end of my fingernail. I mean, I'm talking every winter from age 8 to 22. The dermatologist responded with stronger and stronger steroid creams. And then finally, occlusive plastic gloves that I would wear all night long. And for me, the Brillo was dairy products. As soon as I got away from dairy products, my hands are better. I didn't know I was Brilloing my hands with cheese, yogurt, ice cream, and milk. And I wish my dermatologist or my pediatrician had given me a clue on that, but they didn't know either. Now that we do know thou, let's help people get to the root cause. My hands are fine now, except I don't have fingerprints because one of the side effects of strong steroids is thinning of the skin. I get paper cuts from the least little anything. But it's okay, hands are better. This is George. He's 84. He went whole food plant-based one day. He came in, said, Doc, I feel great. I watched that Forks movie. And he'd been plant-based for 4 months. His weight dropped from obese to normal. His blood pressure on medication was high and came down to normal. His bad cholesterol dropped almost 70 points. HDL good cholesterol went up. His triglycerides dropped from high to normal. He was on 2 meds and then none. And most importantly, vitality, feeling of well-being, vitality were much better. And I see this all the time. In his case, hypertension, not a disease, but inflammation of the artery caused by all those things we talked about. The heme iron, arachidonic acid, trimethylamine oxide was causing high blood pressure. And we call hypertension in our country epidemic, but in plant-based healthcare, I call it rare. We view it as a disease, but really it's just a symptom of wrong diet. And we usually treat with meds, commonly 3 or 4. Where people will work with it, I treat it with the diet. The effectiveness is fair. We're adding more meds. How many had to go back on another med? Effectiveness here, excellent. Monitoring is needed. Cost, moderate. You get the idea that the complications of stroke, heart attack, chronic kidney disease, a much better system. So the root cause here, instead of stopping here and treating it with pills, and we look down beneath the layers of the iceberg to say, the deep meat, dairy, and eggs, saturated fat, animal protein are creating inflammation that lead us to all of this. So again, unfortunately, our system, we stop here with medications instead of getting down to the root cause. What about lower costs versus system revenues? There are a lot of healthcare and pharmaceutical companies doing very well in the current system. Again, not disparaging them, they've responded to a need of people eating these kind of foods. And again, don't get me wrong, these meds do a great deal of good for some people especially, but I think people deserve to know that they may not be necessary if you would just make some simple lifestyle changes. In fact, let's look at plant-based healthcare using the acronym STEPC, safety, tolerance, effectiveness, price, and convenience. Any intervention should be able to kind of pass this test. And in this order, unless it's safe, we shouldn't even think about it. Well, let's compare plant-based healthcare with coronary bypass surgery. On safety, I don't know, pretty safe to learn how to cook rice and beans and veggies and eat salads. This has a 2 to 3% mortality rate that people die right during the procedure. What about tolerance? You may get a few more farts at first, but you get over them after a couple of weeks. This has, on the tolerance, 30% of people have complications after the surgery, all wake up on a ventilator. It's not easy going through bypass surgery. Effectiveness, Dr. Esselstein's study showed 99.4%, 40% of them in the prior 2 years that had heart attack, stroke, or concerns. 99.4% got better on his dietary program, whereas how many have heard, yeah, after 5 years I had to go back for a redo on my bypass? You haven't addressed the root cause, so the disease continues to progress. Price, what'd I do now? I'm in trouble. Okay, the price is pretty much free for getting a couple of cookbooks versus $100,000 or more now for a bypass surgery. But we're bankrupting our society with this end-stage care that's not very effective. And again, convenience, much rather learn how to shop at the farmer's market than go under the knife like that. Again, just my opinion, but I would choose the plant-based healthcare. And then finally, 6 principles. Number 6, joy of success for patients and for providers. People who eat this way come in smiling and feeling great and giving me hugs like nobody told me this before, thank you, right? Some of you are my patients. And other people come in going, still don't feel well and I think I'm getting side effects from my medicine. Can you give me a medicine to treat those side effects? Yep, I'm well trained in that way. If that's how you want to do it, that's what we can do. But this is Charles, not only on the absence of disease side, but Charles is a runner. After going 4 years of plant-based, he noted greater vitality, improved recovery time and sleep, less inflammation. He no longer needed ibuprofen after a long run. And let me tell you what long run means for Charles pretty soon. Increased duration, intensity, and quality of workouts. In fact, Charles noted he kept track from his early teens. As he went into his 20s, his personal best times improved, right? He was getting stronger, faster, bigger. But then they dropped in his 30s. He's getting old. Right? At least that's what he thought. But after 2 weeks on a whole food plant-based diet, nearing age 40, he ran 4 minutes faster on his 10-mile run. He shaved almost 15 seconds per mile off his 5K and he did his first 50K ever at age 38 and finished 4th out of 11 in his age group. But he didn't stop there. He did a 62-mile run and 1st out of 14 in his age group, a 50-mile run, a personal record by over 1 hour and 30 minutes from previously eating meat to not, and dairy and eggs. And then in 2018, at training and races, ran ultra marathons in 9 countries from 50K to 100 miles. I'm like, Charles, you're crazy. How long did that take you? He said, 24 hours. He sent me a picture of him crossing the finish line at a 100-mile race, just to show me that he was upright. This is what I see, and it's no surprise when you eat these foods that contain pro-inflammatory components, and without the fire extinguishers to put it out, you get stiffening, decreased repair time, increased pain. And athletes everywhere are learning this, that a whole food plant-based diet helps to counter that effect. In fact, how many of you saw the movie Game Changers? Just a couple. It's now on Netflix. Last week they put it out on Netflix, and I encourage you to watch it to get an idea. It's a James Cameron movie. I mean, he did Avatar, Titanic, big name. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jackie Chan, James Wilkes. You've got some big names in there. And they really review the stories of some of the world's best and strongest athletes, of the of how they have improved their performance with whole food plant-based eating. The trailer is easy to find. So one question is, how whole food plant-based do I need to be to get the benefits? And the answer really is it depends where you're starting from and what your goals are. You don't have to do any of it, but it's very similar to smoking. We know that smoking causes heart disease, cancer, and a host of inflammatory conditions. Well, so do these foods. So the answer is, the less the better. Now, if you still want to have turkey for Thanksgiving, go for it. If you can't not give up grandma's matzo ball soup, then eat it. Do what you need to do, just the less the better. There is no good amount when it comes to these kind of foods. In fact, it's really the high-protein diet during middle age may be as harmful as smoking, according to that one study I showed you. And Dr. Bardart, who wrote that Reversing Diabetes, kind of puts it in so many words. Plant-based diets are the nutritional equivalent these days of quitting smoking. This is Sharon. Came to my office, whole food, plant-based for 30 years now, and just feeling great and vibrant, no medications. Dan, feeling like he's 30, he golfs the young kids. The bottom line then is eat as if your health and your life depend on it. This is my breakfast every day. I put the steel-cut oats and the goji berries. You can use raisins if you want, but these are very high in antioxidants. In the microwave while I take my shower, decorate it with turmeric, cinnamon, and pumpkin pie spice, some ground flaxseed. There's no magic to this. Top it with whatever berries you've got, maybe a splash of almond or coconut milk. It's like dessert, but it's high in fiber, rich in complex carbs, phytonutrients. I'm just giving you examples. There's no one right answer for all of this. Lunch, quinoa, sweet potatoes, salads, balsamic vinegar instead of oil for your dressing. Lunch, you see how the colors are there. They eat the rainbow. Whole grains, real food. We still grill. We got a great new Weber grill, but instead of animal flesh, we put asparagus and portobello mushrooms and pineapple and corn on the cob and broccoli and cauliflower. Dinner with grilled veggies. You see some brown rice sushi over here. My daughter calls this her Miso Stew. Not just a little measly miso with a couple of scallions and tofu floating in it. No, put in there cabbage and mushrooms and onions of all different kinds. All kind of healthy, colorful. We're attracted to these healthy, colorful foods. And before we end, I also want to just mention, I focus on the health side of things. But perhaps equally or more important is the health of our earth. God only gave us one. And we need to take care of this. It turns out when you look at the amount of resources used to first grow food and then feed it to animals and then eat them as food is multiples of size. In fact, every one day for any one person eating whole food plant-based compared to the standard American diet saves 1,100 gallons of fresh water, 45 pounds of grain, 30 square feet of forest. It's just a tragedy now that the Amazon, which are the lungs of our planet, is burning in order to raise cattle, to feed people beef. 10 pounds of carbon dioxide in one animal's life. So speaking of that last one too, we see this on the grill, but we got to remember that behind that are sentient beings that also have an ability to care, to take care of their young, to feel pain and suffering. And this is one of the things, too, I think that many people can relate to sense to say, hey, we're here not just for ourselves, but to take care of others with whom we share the planet. There's a good movie on Netflix, too, called Earthlings to watch as well. So additional resources, Forks Over Knives is sort of the major documentary. If you want to take a picture of this, feel free. Nutritionfacts.org is Dr. Michael Greger's website, where he posts over 2,000 videos with a review of the scientific literature. Chickpea and Bean is Mark Ramirez's website on diabetes. Again, all of these good resources for you, and I can put this back up after if any of you missed it. And let me go through a couple of these in particular. Dr. Michael Greger wrote the book How Not to Die. It's probably the good title, right? Probably the best I've seen in studying this for all these years. And he just came out with a new book called How Not to Diet. which will be out on December 10th. You can pre-order it now on Amazon, and an evidence-based approach to helping lose weight. We are very fortunate that this national organization called PPOD, which stands for Plant-Based Prevention of Disease, is going to be holding their national conference next May in Michigan, right here on the campus of EMU in 2020. We'll have national experts, including Dr. Kim Williams from Rush University, who is the former head of the American College of Cardiology. And one of his famous quotes is, "There are two kinds of cardiologists in the world, those who are vegan and those who haven't read the data." The data is so clear. That's him in the middle there. And then Sarai Stanzik, the one I mentioned, who reversed her MS and did the documentary Code Blue, is coming to speak too. They'll both be at the Saturday afternoon community session at the Pease Auditorium right here on the campus of EMU. So sign up for that. I think it's only $25 or $30 for the whole afternoon session with 4 national level speakers on this. If you want to stay for the whole conference, it's centered towards health professionals, dietitians, nurses, and doctors, but the public are always welcome, and that will continue with some of the best speakers. Plant-based nutrition support group. We're fortunate to have the largest nutrition support group for plant-based eating in the country here, right in Southeast Michigan. Paul Chatlin, I mentioned, it's free to join, pbnsg.org, and you'll get emails about their events. Dr. Michael Greger's coming to speak on January 8th. Dr. Milton Mills from Chicago will be speaking in March. And this husband and wife neurologist team, Shirzai, will be coming in February, and they are actually reversing early-stage Alzheimer's disease with plant-based diets. So there is an answer to our Alzheimer's epidemic. And all this is just part of a broader food revolution that's joining momentum by the week. I showed you this growth of chicken per capita consumption. See this little blip at the end here since 1997? Or 2007, I'm sorry. We've actually seen a decline in overall meat consumption in a rapid drop here as people have recognized it's better for them, it's better for the planet, it's better for the animals. And the levels of per capita total meat consumption now are down to less than 1981 when I graduated from medical school. So this is not just some co-op hippies anymore. This is a movement that's happening among people of all types. Before, though, you go out and start beating up your friends and family and telling them to throw away that chicken, you're going to kill yourself. Be tactful, be careful, be nice. Remember, there's no love sincerer than the love of food. It's much better technique to adopt it yourself and then share how you feel and your benefits. People are attracted to that, like, oh, I see you're looking more healthy, you're vibrant, you're doing more, you're losing weight. What are you doing? I want some of whatever you've got. As opposed to, that's going to kill you. It just doesn't go over very well. We've all been doing this for a while, made that mistake now and then. Keep your friends and family, share your love and experience for health and vitality. And if they're interested, see? So let some of the third place sources like Forks Over Knives, Game Changers, or the book How Not to Die do the talking and education for you. I guess there's one love more sincere. This is my grandpuppy, Bella. She's so cool. And it's always nice, too, when a carnivore loves its so usual prey. With that, my final quote, when you have your health, you have 1,000 dreams. And when you don't, you have just one. So if you still have it, hold on to it, because without that, not much else matters. We have some time for questions. First of all, yes. First of all, thank you all again for your attention. I know I ran over a little bit, but I think you said we have till 4 o'clock for questions. If anybody has to leave, though, feel free. Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Doc, I got him late, so I don't know your name. So I apologize for that.
It's okay.
But I've been practicing vegetarian, so now I'm just reading that, seeing what you're saying about, because I like my cheese and eggs. So
yes.
But I've been doing vegetarian food for 2 years,
Good for you.
I started off vegan, and then I said, well, I really like cheese and eggs, so and I like cakes and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
but I'm a chef also, and I've been practicing vegan foods, doing different kind of vegan foods.
Good
But
for you.
as I was doing studies, I'm finding out that other foods, like vegetarian foods, or vegan foods, plant-based, are also toxic for us. So like eggplants, tomatoes, seeds, stuff like that. So I was wondering, beans, cashews, nuts. So, and what the doctor, I can't remember his name that I was listening to, he was saying that all foods are not meant to be eaten. They give off a chemical for us that, just like a peanut diet, a lot of people get allergic from peanuts because they get off a toxin because they don't want to be eaten. So is that true, or is, because I love eggplants, and I'm like, I gotta give up eggplants too?
Eat all the eggplant you want. Let me tell you where the confusion comes from, though. There's a few threads of things you brought there, and the doc you're referring to, Dr. Gundry, who wrote a book called The Plant Paradox, filled with pseudoscience and unsubstantiated dogma. This book, unfortunately, portrays a paradox that, plants are healthy for us, but they contain a certain toxic compounds in there called phytates, and you can't digest these, and they're toxic to humans. They include things like ricin, one of the most potent poisons known to mankind. Well, here's the reality. Beans are one of the highest sources of these, and when you cook them, they're easily destroyed. So if you're eating raw kidney beans, stop. But nobody eats raw beans. You don't do it that way. So these substances are easily destroyed. The amounts you get in there, by the way, there are over 1,000 different subsets of those, and many of them are healthy phytonutrients. So he takes a kernel of truth and puts it into a book, which now is selling millions of copies. It's worse than that, though. Part of his solution to the plant paradox is that you get his line of blockers. And good news for the first one, it's only $80 a month, or it's $1,000 a year, you can block these. But if you really want to be healthy, you get the whole line of 10, and you're spending over $10,000 a year. He's getting rich off this pseudoscience that unfortunately is not good science. Dr. Greger has a good video in there on nutritionfacts.org that reviews his book. He usually doesn't review books. He's got enough time reviewing the actual peer-reviewed medical literature. But bottom line, don't worry about tomato seeds, eggplant, beans. They're all perfectly healthy foods. In fact, if you look at the blue zones, the areas of the world where people live the longest, one thing they have in common is they all eat beans. Now, it's soybeans in Okinawa, Japan. It's chickpeas and lentils in the Middle East. It's kidney beans and black beans in Mexico and Africa. We know that beans are one of the healthiest, most longevity-promoting foods. The other kernel that you had in there is regarding the nightshade vegetables, and that's where some of the peppers and eggplant get a bad name. And it turns out there are a small proportion of people who are sensitive to these, just like peanut allergies or strawberry allergy or gluten sensitivity. It's a relatively small percent, but if someone does have chronic intolerance symptoms of irritable bowel or other and can't solve it by just going whole food plant-based, which the majority do because you're finally putting real food in, then I do say, hey, give a trial off the nightshade vegetables. And if you don't tolerate them, don't eat them. But for the vast majority of people, they're fine.
One thing he was saying, though, he was saying that no black men should eat peanuts because that causes prostate cancer in them. So
yeah, that's wrong.
Is that okay?
Yep, sorry. Yeah, prostate cancer, again, I don't know how much detail you want to get into. There's no evidence that peanuts cause prostate cancer. I haven't read that actual citation, but just like a lot of the other stuff he publishes, it's just inaccurate pseudoscience. Now, peanuts are high in fat, and all nuts, if you're trying to lose weight, you want to watch maybe a handful a day or a third of a cup just for calorie density-wise, like other nuts. No, prostate cancer is largely contributed by dairy and chicken. Those are probably the two biggest. Saturated fat and animal protein are probably the main components of that. And then again, the cancer-fighting phytonutrients are absent from the animal foods, and the cancer-promoting animal protein, IGF-1, heterocyclic amines seem to be. Dean Ornish did a study after he showed that you could reverse heart disease on reversing early stage prostate cancer, and showed that this similar to the heart disease, by eating the right diet, managing stress, exercising, that even men with biopsy-proven prostate cancer can commonly, not always, can commonly reverse or arrest their prostate cancer. But yes, thanks for the excellent questions. It also points out a key point: don't believe everything you read, either in books or on the internet. And you know, as a science-based guy, evidence-based guy, I'm always open and willing to look at new information, and that we all should be willing to look at new information. So I do try to learn and study from what these folks say, but unfortunately, it's more often about the money than the science. Yes.
I've been on a plant-based diet for 60 years.
60?
60 years.
Wow, you're ahead of me.
In a couple of months, I'll be 82 years old.
All right.
And I do not have any pain anywhere.
Wow.
But what I want to know is what you think about coconut oil.
Coconut oil?
Yeah.
Coconut oil is in that lower right quadrant of processed plant foods. And when you process a food and take out one component of it, you are removing many of the other nutrients that nature provided with it. So whole coconut has certain vitamins and minerals and fiber and protein. And when you extract just the fat, you're doing several things wrong. You now have something that is the most calorie-dense food, 4,000 calories per pound. So it only takes 1 teaspoon of coconut oil to equal 120 calories. You've just made it, and that doesn't fill your stomach up at all. So coconut oil, or any oil for that matter, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, any of them, contribute to calorie density and therefore overweight. Secondly, the foods that come in real foods, whole foods, work together. So the oil that comes with the coconut or the sugar that comes with the beet goes along with phytonutrients, fiber, and other to do good for our body. But when you extract it out and bring sucrose from that sugar beet, it's just empty calories. It's just pure empty calories. So coconut oil is not a good health food. Really, all oils should be minimized. Probably people ask me, well, what's the best? And I say, you mean what's the least worst? Try to correct them on that. And it probably is a cold pressed olive oil if you had to have some. But there's no reason. There's no reason. You can use just plain balsamic vinegar on your salad. You can stir steam your vegetables with a little bit of vegetable broth or water or white wine. You can do a lot of things to get rid of the oils, including coconut oil. But yeah, thank you for that. A lot of people are now pushing this kind of medium chain triglycerides. Coconut's healthy for the brain, coconut oil. Or I know they run it through their teeth and say that, what's that called? Yeah, squeezing it, pulling oil or something. Yeah. Just say no to coconut oil.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you fight osteoporosis with plant-based diet?
Great question. Yes, osteoporosis is a thinning of the bones that tends to occur with age. Largely in our country, and that should be a clue. There are many areas of the world where it's quite rare. After age 35, and then especially for women after menopause, osteoporosis tends to accelerate, just so people understand the definition. This can then, of course, increase the risk of hip fractures or any fractures. And the answer to your question is it is largely preventable. When you say, can you fight it? A whole food plant-based diet is the best way to help prevent it in the first place, plus weight-bearing exercise and either sunshine or vitamin D. You know, these are the things that really do matter. But it's largely the animal protein that causes a calcium wasting. When you increase protein intake, when you double your protein intake, you increase your calcium excretion. Initially, that comes from the muscles as your body is going, but over time, that chronic negative balance can lead to a loss of bone mass. Osteoporosis is also much more than just bone density and calcium. It's really the bone structure and integrity that matters as well. So bottom line answer to your question is you can commonly prevent, not 100%, but commonly prevent osteoporosis, and you can commonly arrest it for someone that has it to prevent it from getting worse. Again, the main things are limit or eliminating animal protein, taking vitamin D or getting adequate sunshine, and weight-bearing exercise, like walking, skipping rope, jumping, or other where you're carrying your weight. So yes, good question, thank you.
So that over any supplements?
You know that supplements for osteoporosis don't work very well if you're still in negative calcium balance. Vitamin D is probably the main one if people aren't getting enough sunshine, and in Michigan, that's not an uncommon problem. So 1,000 to 2,000 units of vitamin D a day is probably the only supplement I recommend for that. But we no longer recommend routine calcium supplements. They don't prevent osteoporosis, and they do increase the risk of calcifying your arteries and increase risk of heart disease. Now, so for someone who has osteoporosis, the best is to get your calcium, or anybody, get your calcium from beans and greens. It comes from the soil and it goes into the plants, and they use it to do their equations. So you can get plenty of calcium from your food and avoid the supplements. Thank you.
Dr. Breakey, point of interest, you mentioned the blue zones.
Yes.
For those who may not be aware, one of the blue zones is Loma Linda, California,
Yes.
which is residence for many Seventh-day Adventists because they follow a whole food plant-based diet.
Yes, great. Thanks for mentioning that. In fact, one of the studies that has helped us to understand this is the Adventist Health Study 1 and 2. And because these Seventh-day Adventists tend to not smoke and take pretty good care of themselves and sleep adequately and have spiritual awareness, they're good to study in that regard because they're otherwise similar. But some of them eat meat, some of them are pesco-vegetarians, some are vegetarian, some are lacto, and some are vegan. And a large enough number in each category that they can do the studies. And in the studies, what we see is a stepwise, a dose-response relationship that the more animal food, the more obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, and as you go down that ladder, the incidence decreases. So yes, thanks for mentioning that. I should have put that slide in here. I got too many different talks. Thank you. And that blue zone is, again, one of the most interesting because it's not just a cultural island like Okinawa. It's right near Los Angeles, right in America, showing that hey, even with expressway traffic and smog, it really is largely the diet. So even here, you can eat right and get the health benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. Thank you. By the way, we are also Andrea's working with me on this. The idea of making Washtenaw County the next blue zone. If you have not read the book by Dan Buettner yet called The Blue Zones, but he did a study with National Geographic to discover those areas of the world where people are longest lived without disease. And we want to make this community, this county, the next. So there's a group of us working on that, and if you have an interest, let me know afterwards. Yes?
Hi.
I've seen you before.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention, you mentioned about the meeting that's coming up with
Peapod?
Eastern University.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to mention, Angie is here. Angie is, are you graduated now? Oh, yeah. Now, she's a nutritionist in the community, and she meets with us every Monday at Park Ridge. And I just want you to know that we have a number of seniors that have been introduced to the plant diet,
Yes.
but they cannot afford it because of their income. So working with the Washtenaw County Health Department, we are helping you financially. So if you have people that want to attend this workshop, let me know, or either let Debbie and the health team here know. And this is how we get the information out to the community by networking with the churches. So if anyone wants to attend and cannot afford it, we will give you certificates for that, cards
Great.
for that. But it's done through the county health department, but you do have to work with your churches. And if you do not have a church home, let them know, and we will advocate for you.
Excellent, great. Thank you for being a part of that solution. As you say, a lot of people get the why, and then they want to say, okay, what about the how? How do I find this or cook it or afford it or whatever? In reality, as far as the affordability question, the most expensive food is the one that makes you sick. Because doctor bills and copays on drugs and hospitalizations and disability and walkers are not cheap. So the most expensive food is that one which makes you sick, right? And there are ways to make it easily affordable. I mean, rice and beans are two of the least expensive foods of all. And if you buy vegetables in season and fruits or get frozen, which are frozen at the peak of freshness, they're really healthy, and you can make great combinations, herbs and spices. So it doesn't have to be expensive. One of the whole travesties of our system, though, is that the processed and animal food industries have the strongest lobbyists, and they are subsidized. You know, if you were to look at the true cost of a hamburger, it should be more like $15 or $20 instead of $1, because our taxpayer subsidies are going to subsidize the growing of all this low-cost corn, which then is turned into high fructose corn syrup and animal feed. And unfortunately, our misguided principles from the past that we need lots of animal protein, let's encourage this, are carrying over now to make, instead it should be flipped on its head. Fruits and veggies should be subsidized, and we should be encouraging those. But yeah, thanks for mentioning that and being part of that solution. Yes. In the back.
What about organic versus non-organic vegetables?
Yeah, great question. Within that quadrant of whole food plant-based, there are better and less good ones within there. And for example, sweet potatoes are better than white potatoes, just because they have more phytonutrients and carotenoids. And organic is better than non-organic. But in this case, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because even conventional fruits and vegetables grown with sprays and pesticides have an average of 1/13 the amount of toxins and pesticides as you have in animal foods because of the biomagnification. You know, remember, a cow, by the time it's slaughtered, has eaten 75,000 pounds of corn. And all the glyphosate and contaminants that were put on that corn are stored in that cow and then come through in the hamburger in much higher quantities than what you would get on a whole salad full of vegetables. So yes, organic is better, not only in terms of less exposure to pesticides, but because the plants have to fend off the bugs themselves, they develop more phytonutrients. They're actually healthier in being organic and having healthier soil. So good question. It's a fine tuning. Eat more sweet potatoes instead of regular, but if all you have is regular, eat more organic instead. But if either affordability or availability means all you have is conventional, just eat plant-based and then fine tune where possible. Great question, thank you. We're up to 4:02, maybe one more question and then I'll be around afterwards.
Yes, I was wondering, what did you think about the Burger King vegetarian sandwich?
The Impossible Burger.
Yes.
yes. So the Impossible Burger is, again, it's one of those plant-based lower right quadrant processed foods, which is way better than the real thing in terms of, it doesn't have animal protein, it's all plant-based. It doesn't have heterocyclic amines, the problems. It is still 12 grams of saturated fat. It's processed, it's extracted, it's all the things we talked about with coconut oil into a food that's meant to taste as close as possible to a real meat burger. In the process of processing all that, it's certainly not healthy. So, but when you talk about healthy, Dr. Greger talks about this, it's really, when someone asks you, is this healthy? It's like, compared to what? Yes, this egg is healthy compared to that sausage next to it, but not near as healthy as this oatmeal. So, all things are relative. So Impossible Burger is better for the environment, better for the animals, better for your health, but still not the answer. I call it this and similar things we call transition foods. If someone feels like, boy, I just can't give up my Whopper burgers, well, and boy, the local Burger King's selling 37% Impossible Burgers now. That's another example of how much this is catching on. People are saying, oh, okay, because it does taste the same. Now, somebody asked me, have you tried it? I'm like, no desire. After 42 years of not eating, and by the way, in March of 1977 was my last red meat, was a Whopper. But after 42 years of not eating it, the last thing I want is something that's simulating tasting like a meat. Like, again, that's me. Everybody's on a journey, but I hope that answers it better. But keep going from there. Once again, thank you all for your attention and interest. Spread some health.
Thank you very much, Dr. Breakey. Oh, okay. So our co-leaders are here.
Oh.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Breakey.
Oh my gosh, a fruit basket. They know me.
On behalf of the health department and behalf of the Ypsilanti SDA Church, we would just like to tell you, thank you so much. Who can, by show of raise of hands or amen, state how blessed have you been today? Thank you for the new information and the revelation and refreshing of all information. We are incredibly blessed, and we are so thankful that you took the time out of your schedule to come here. And so this gift basket may or may not include organic and non-organic fruit basket, but it's on the right quadrant of the information.
Perfect. Eat the rainbow. Anybody want some after? Come on up. Thank
you so much.
Appreciate it.
So thank you so much for coming again, and we're just going to stand and pray. Dear kind and Heavenly Father, thank you so much, Lord, for this wonderful afternoon that you have given us. You brought Dr. Breakey here so that he could present this wonderful plant-based diet to us. We ask you, Father God, that you will continue to help us so that we could apply this information and share it with our friends and our family. Thank you so much for your love and your mercy. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.